What's up, y'all? So I know it's been a couple weeks since we had a podcast episode. That's on me. Let me give you kind of some insight into what's been going on the last couple of weeks. For those who do not know, I live in the great city of New Orleans, and we had a whole hurricane come through. New Orleans fared better than most. There was definitely damage, some flooding. There was, I think, very minimal damage to my home, but there are cities that are completely leveled, some that are underwater, just uninhabitable. There's a city just south of New Orleans where the levee broke and the whole city is underwater. So keep those surrounding cities in your prayers. All the news wants to talk about is New Orleans. But for those who do not know, yes, there is more to South Louisiana than New Orleans. There are cities south and southwest of New Orleans, and they are having a very difficult time right now. I have some mutuals on TikTok who are going through an incredible rebuilding process, and they can definitely use your prayers. And if you want to get involved or help, there are rescue efforts, I believe, that are still underway. The American Red Cross, Convoy of Hope, I believe, is, active in that area right now. Salvation Army, food banks, whatever it is that you feel in your heart led to do it. Don't feel like you're obligated to do anything. But if you're wanting to help, those are the organizations you can definitely go to. Or if you have people that you follow on TikTok or Instagram and they've been affected, if they have like a GoFundMe or a Venmo, you can reach out personally in that way. Nothing wrong with doing that at all. But I'm good. I had one roommate who stayed, and so we've been able to get updates from her. We got power back finally yesterday. We still don't have Wi-Fi. I have 3 roommates who are at the house, and I'm the only one that's still not there. And I won't be back until probably the 18th. So I work from home. So I need Wi-Fi, and I need a stable Wi-Fi connection. And we have no food. So our roommate had to clear out our entire refrigerator and freezer. And so I know it's going to be a while before grocery stores are completely restocked, because everyone is going to be trying to restock their entire fridge and pantry. So I figured I may as well just wait, stay here with friends and family, see some more people before I head back. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I record when I have time. I have a full-time job, like I said, because I work from home. So I record when I have time, and I had time to record that Friday, but that Friday is when they projected a Category 4. And so I spent my free time figuring out evacuation and what that looks like, because that is not an easy, quick decision to make. It is a very emotional decision. There's a lot that goes into it that I had no idea. I was not prepared to even have that thought of what it would look like to have to step away from New Orleans for an undue amount of time. So yeah, that's why nothing got recorded and the episode didn't drop on the 30th. And then that week I'm in the Carolinas. It took me 2 days to get here because traffic was so bad. I decided to just take a break. My go-to whenever I feel like everything outside of my control is just in shambles is to find something that I do control and laser focus on that. And I don't go home very often. So I decided to just kind of take a beat and spend time with family and friends and try to just take my mind off of what's going on in Louisiana, because I didn't really know much. There was almost a whole day where I couldn't get in contact with anyone in Louisiana. So trying to take my mind off of what's happening in Louisiana. Can I go home? When can I go home? Will we get power? Will we get Wi-Fi? Those things. And so just try to take some of my mind off of that and enjoy time with family. And in enjoying time with family and friends, I decided, let's take a week off. Well, take 2 weeks off, I guess. But we are back. We're recording. We're trying to get back on a regular schedule. Trying to remember how we did this thing. Because if I get out of habit, I get forgetful. But thank you for your patience. Thank you for sticking around. Let's get started. So building this podcast has been quite a journey. I am still trying to figure out what it is I want to do with this podcast, what I want to say, how I want to use my voice. And I feel like most people would have all those logistics figured out before they get started. But yeah, I don't do that. The timing just felt right. So decided to let's just get started. And what I've learned about social media is that social media is not perfect. It's all about finding your niche and figuring out what you're passionate about and finding people who are passionate about the same things. So it's a beautiful mess right now. And in the spirit of that beautiful mess, I want to share something that's semi-personal, something that's been kind of on my heart for the last couple of weeks. So I had a bit of an epiphany, and I've been working through it. It's pushed me to ask some deep questions about myself and about my relationship with God. So, quick disclaimer, this is going to be a very Christian-y episode. I do have quite a bit of followers who are not Christian. So if you're not Christian, please stick around. I might say something you find helpful. You may learn something new. Why not? Stick around. You are welcome here. So let's get into it. Now, we know, as I mentioned before, we had a hurricane that came through South Louisiana, about 2 weeks ago. Today is September the 12th. So yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago. The hurricane came through. Ironically, my family was actually supposed to come in on the 1st of September. They're supposed to fly in, hang out with me for a couple of days in New Orleans, and then we were all going to fly back to Charlotte on the 4th, and I would spend a week there. Well, plans changed, but not because of the hurricane, because of COVID. So a couple of weeks before the 1st, I was talking to my mom, and she was asking me about cases in the city. And just to be completely honest, I'm the worst person to ask about what COVID is like anywhere. My mom is very wise and cautious. I'm very carpe diem. I've just been living my life. And so I am the worst person to ask because, if I have access, if it's available, I'm going for it. And so I'm like, try to be as honest with her as possible. Like, cases are up, but life's good. But she was a little more concerned about, getting COVID, even though, me and my mom and my brother and my aunt were all vaccinated. She was still concerned about, maybe catching COVID, bringing it back. My brother is a cook, so him bringing it back to the restaurant. So she said, she's going to talk with my aunt and they were going to make a decision on whether to continue with the trip or cancel. So I said, okay, just let me know what you decide. The week goes by, come up to the weekend, and I text my mom and I ask her, what decision have you made? And I already knew because I know my mom. My mom's going to err on the side of caution. That's just who she is. She's wise like that. I'm not. She said, they've decided to cancel, and I would just fly out to Charlotte and then fly back. And I said, okay. Sent her that text saying, okay, and then went about my daily walk. So as I'm walking, I'm not even half a mile from my house, and it hit me. It just like a ton of bricks kind of hit me. My mom, whom I haven't seen since April, she and my stepdad came down and saw me for about 2 days in April, right after Easter. So I haven't really spent any large quality time with my mom in several months. I was excited for them to come down because I love my city. I love to show off my city. And she just canceled on me for reasons that are completely reasonable and none that I would ever argue with. But I wasn't even disappointed. I kind of stopped and I should be disappointed right now. I should be upset. I should be a little heartbroken or maybe even a little mad because I was looking forward to them coming. And then now all of a sudden it's canceled. I should be upset, but I'm not. I'm not even bothered. I'm not even fazed. And I'm just standing there like, why? Why does this not bother me? My mom, whom I love and whom I'm very close with, just canceled on me. I should be upset. Why am I not upset? So I continue on my walk and I'm just trying to really figure myself out. Because this feeling of not being disappointed is not foreign to me, but I've never examined it before. I've never really stopped and thought about why, when I'm faced with what should be disappointment, I'm not fazed. And it took me a minute and I realized that I wasn't disappointed because I have come to expect people to disappoint me. That's the expectation I have, is that if you come into my life, you're going to disappoint me. And realizing that, I took kind of a memory lane journey, thinking about all the different relationships I've had over the years, and realized so many of them have been so surface level. And they've been so surface level because I begin the relationship with an expectation of disappointment. And I refuse to allow myself to be hurt. So I immediately put up my guard. I don't let people in. I don't get vulnerable with people. I don't give people the opportunity to know me. I'm very selective in who knows me. And I've always seen that as wisdom because, not everyone should have access to you. But then I realized no one has access to me. Not even the people who are close to me. They don't have access to me. I don't give people permission to know me. Like, what's wrong with me? I have a bit of a confession to make. If you've known me for quite some time, let me just say this. If you knew me before I moved to New Orleans, I'd say between like 2014 and 2020, because 2014 is when I started going to Elevation Church, and that's when I really started to build relationships and get into community. If you knew me in that time period, and at some point in that time period, you looked at me and you told me you loved me, I didn't believe you. I didn't believe you. If at some point in that time period you told me I'm here for you, or I support you, or I care for you, I didn't believe you. I didn't believe you. And it was nothing you did. It's nothing personal. It's just the way I've trained my brain that when I hear certain key words, to shut down and to not take it to heart. It's almost like, words are like cars on a highway. And all those words are in the left lane, but at a certain point, the left lane is blocked and you can't pass. It's like those words are riding in the left lane in my brain. And as soon as they get to a certain point, they can no longer move. They can no longer function. I heard you and I believed you believed what you were saying, but I did not believe it for me, if that makes any sense. There's only one person, I think, outside of family, because, family obviously gets a pass. For me anyway, everyone's family is different, but there's only one person that I know and believe in my heart loves me. And that's my best friend, Anne. And there are certain people who are going to hear this and be really, really upset. But yeah, is my best friend, Anne. And the ironic thing is she's never told me that she loves me. She's never told me that she cares for me or that she's here for me or, that she supports me. And there are two reasons. Number one, she knows me well enough to know that hearing those words won't do anything for me. So there's no point in saying it. Words of affirmation is not my love language. You can tell me nice things all you want. It's not going to do much for me. She knows that about me very, very well. We've been through a lot. Number two, she doesn't say those things because she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to because her actions speak louder than her words. And that's where I interpret love, not in your words, but in your actions. I'm learning all this about myself while I'm walking around uptown New Orleans. And all this stuff I knew about myself, but I'd never really sat down and examined it. To me, things like I love you, I care about you, I support you, I'm here for you. To me, it's just empty words followed by a lack of action. I don't trust that people mean what they say when they say it. And that's where I got to. It's that word, trust. Trust. I came to two conclusions. There's one that I expect people to flake out and walk away. Because love to me is not words, it's an action. If you love me, you won't say it. I won't need you to say it. If you love me, you'll stay. And I've had a lot of people come into my life that don't stay. It's like I'm the leaf in everyone's life. I come into their life for one thing and then I'm gone, or I don't matter, or they blow me away. I realize I don't have trust issues. I just don't trust people. I can't have trust issues. Trust issues would imply that there's an issue with trust in my life, but trust does not exist in my life. It's just not there. It's absent. I have a problem. So the way my brain works, I like to break things down and then put them back together into something that I can understand without losing any facts or truth. So in approaching the word trust, I realized that I didn't understand the word trust like I thought I did. From a Christian perspective, I always equated trust with faith, but that's not the case. So what does trust even mean? Because apparently I didn't know, because I have none. So Oxford Dictionary defines trust as firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. That's trust as a noun, and then trust as a verb is believe in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of. So relationships have to be built on trust is an example they give, and then they give as an example as a verb, I never should have trusted her. So belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. In this context, we're talking about people, and we're also talking about God, because this is the problem. My lack of trust in people has spilled over into my lack of trust in God. It's affecting my relationship with God. And, we say as Christians all the time, people may let you down, but God never will. And something I say all the time, I did youth ministry, so this is something I always said, people suck, but that has nothing to do with who God is. People will let you down all the time, but God never will. You have to separate what people do from who God is. And I realized that I know this to be true, but I had a hard time believing it for myself, and I couldn't walk this out in my own life because I was equating people's actions with the character of God, and that is a problem. This is what I came to understand was this is more so a mantra that we tell ourselves as Christian because we have a hard time believing it. And so that's how the dictionary defines trust. And this is also something I found that I thought was interesting because trust is also a legal term. And the law defines trust as an arrangement whereby a person, trustee, holds property as its nominal owner for the good of one or more beneficiaries. So, a trust. When I look at that, and if I kind of put that into a Christian perspective, it looks like surrender. I have a problem with surrender, obviously. So that's how the Oxford Dictionary defines trust. So then I wanted to know, well, how does the Bible define trust? A website I love to use whenever I'm doing any kind of Bible study or research is called gotquestions.org. If you've never used that website, it's a great resource. This is the best way I can describe it. If you have a question, chances are someone else has had the exact same question. And gotquestions.org, pretty much that's their library, is questions that people have asked, and they use the Bible to answer them so that you're able to kind of understand maybe a more complex topic or something of that nature so that you can do your own research. So I went to gotquestions.org and I asked, how does the Bible define trust? Because I wanted to know. And this is what they said. The word trust translated in the Bible literally means a bold, confident, sure security or action based on that security. Trust is not exactly the same as faith, which is the gift of God. They reference Ephesians 2, 8-9. Rather, trust is what we do because of the faith we have been given. Trusting is believing in the promises of God in all circumstances, even in those where the evidence seems to be to the contrary. Nevertheless, the practical consequence of faith in God is trust, which we prove by living out our full acceptance of God's promises day by day. Furthermore, it is by this trust that we are promised peace, you will keep in peace him whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. And they reference Isaiah 26:3. Okay, so that's how we define trust. So what does all that mean? And how do I make it make sense to me? Because I have a habit of thinking in metaphors. So the way I made it make sense, because in relation to faith, faith is like words and then trust is action. Not necessarily that faith is only what we say, but trust is the action behind our faith. So does this mean that trust is the evidence of our faith? We know the Bible says, works is the evidence of faith. You will know our faith by what we do, our character, our works, how we go about living our life. Is that also the same with trust? Will you know our faith by the way we trust God? Because our dictionary defines trust as a firm belief in the reliability, trust, ability, or strength of someone or something. Now, let's look up real quick while I'm sitting at the computer how the Bible defines, not the Bible, but how the dictionary defines faith. That's a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. Strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. So a complete trust or confidence in someone or something. And then our Bible defines faith, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Okay. It's starting to make some sense to me. I have faith in God. I believe in the impossible, or else I wouldn't have moved to New Orleans. But I obviously have trouble believing in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of God in my life. I don't trust him. And why? I've been asking myself 3 basic questions over the last couple weeks. The first question, do I trust that God knows what he's doing with my life? Do I trust that God knows what he's doing in my life? I had to sit that one down. Let me kind of explain the last year and a half if you don't know. January 4, 2020, I packed up what I could fit in my car and I moved down to New Orleans for the purpose of planting a church. That is a whole story. Don't ask me. I'll share it when the time is right. I had no job, no real money. I think I had 1 or 2 paychecks coming in. Believing that this is where God had called me to, and this is where I was supposed to be. In that whole month of January, because I finally did get a job once I interviewed to a place a couple days after I moved, and I got an offer about half a week later. But my job didn't start until February. So the whole month of January was basically faith, trying to stay afloat, but also be in the city. I was staying in Mississippi at the time. So I was driving an hour back and forth almost every day to New Orleans just to spend time in the city, get to know the city, because that was very important to me. And God made that happen. And then the pandemic hit, and then things kind of fell. And I stayed in New Orleans when I could have easily just moved back. But I had faith that this is where I was supposed to be. I believed in what I could not see, that God had a plan for me being here. Now, this is where trust comes in. Did I trust that God would provide? I think I came into New Orleans with faith and with trust because I had to, because I didn't have any resources of my own that could keep me afloat. I had to believe, 1, that God had called me here, and 2, trust that he had the strength and the ability to provide and that I could rely on him. I had that, but somewhere along the way that broke, and there were a lot of things in between. And now that I look back, I allowed the actions of others to shape and change the way I trusted God. My faith has been kind of rocky lately, if I'm being completely honest. It hasn't been as smooth and solid as it has been in the past. And I think a lot of that has to do with some of the relationships in my life and just trying to navigate through those. And a lot of that is me being angry with God. And that goes to my second question. Do I trust that God knows what he's doing with the people in my life? Do I trust that God is making the right decisions with the people in my life? Which is a heavy question to ask. But if you're not asking heavy questions, then what are you doing? I know what the Bible says. I know what God's character is. I know that God doesn't make mistakes. I know that God is purposeful, and I know that God has a will and a way, and he will get the glory in the end. But I am still a human being living on this earth, breathing and walking and experiencing all these different things. And I have so many questions because I keep getting hurt, and I'm keep wondering and asking God, what is the point of it all? Why do you keep bringing people in my life just for me to feel pain? Do I trust that God knows what he's doing with the people in my life? Can I rely on him whenever can I trust that God is bringing someone in my life for my good? Because everything he does is for my good, whatever the outcome. But lately, I haven't been able to see it that way. I just assume that if you're coming to my life, you're just going to end up hurting me in the end. So I block you. I put my guard up. I only give you just enough access so that you don't notice that you'll never know me. And then the third question I had to ask is, what's keeping me from trusting God? And if you're struggling with this as well, trusting that God has the ability and the resources and the will and the love to care for you, these are some of the conclusions that I've come to. What is keeping me from trusting God? Number one, pride. Pride. I won't surrender. I have an issue with surrendering my life and my will to God. God did the absolute impossible by moving me to this city and sustaining me, and I'm thriving and I'm doing so well and I'm happy. And somewhere along the way, that kind of broke that trust that I had in God. And I think a lot of it's pride, not being able to admit that I'm angry, that I'm hurt, I'm confused, I'm lost. So that's number one. Number two, it's keeping me from trusting God is fear. Faith and fear are two sides of the same coin. Don't let people try to tell you how they're so full of faith. To get to that faith, there had to be some kind of fear. They're connected in an interesting way. My pastor said that today, and I thought it was so true, how faith and fear are connected. But fear has kept me from really trusting God, afraid that if I humble myself and surrender to his will, that I'm just going to get hurt. Afraid that if I follow him, I'm going to go in the wrong direction. Afraid that I'm going to lose everything if I trust him. Which is ironic considering I gave up everything just to be here. It's crazy how we can have these thoughts in our head. If I trust God, if I do this, what if I lose everything? I had to give up everything just to get down here. I gave up a high level volunteer position in church. I gave up a lot of access, a lot of respect, a lot of relationships, a lot of friendships. I gave up a position. I gave up the job I had. I gave up security. I gave up comfort. I gave up a home. I lost so much just moving here, and I gained so much more. And yet here I am, over a year later, asking myself this dumb question. Can I trust God? Yes, I can. He's never failed me. He's never let me down. If I look back in different situations in my past, he's always come through. When I've lost, he's given me so much more. I can absolutely trust God, but what is keeping me from taking those steps? What is blocking me? And honestly, it's my pride and it's fear. How do we get rid of pride? We humble ourselves. We get low. Get in a posture of surrender and submission and submit to the will of God. And let him take control. Let him direct our ways. Stop trying to be in the driver's seat. You know, what's the opposite? How do you defeat fear? Faith. Faith doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means that you're not letting it get in your way. Faith is how you break through fear. And what happens when I don't trust in God? I'm lost. I'm just wandering aimlessly from place to place, trying to figure out purpose here, purpose there. When God is just standing there waiting for me, saying, "You done? Come on. I'm still here." I'm just standing there looking at him with my arms crossed while his hand is stretched out. I don't have to be lost when I can simply just trust that God knows what he's doing with my life, and God knows what he's doing with the people in my life, and trusting that God knows exactly how my life is supposed to turn out, and trust that God has my best interests at heart. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And if we're being honest with ourselves, that's probably one of the most cliche Bible verses. I mean, you can literally find it everywhere, on a picture frame, on a pillow, on a Bible cover. It's everywhere. It's everyone's favorite verse. It's one of the first verses we learned how to memorize. And this verse is a promise from God. But on the flip side, I'm seeing that if I look at it from a different perspective, it's God calling me to trust him. "For I know the plans I have for you," declares the Lord. Why should I trust God? Nothing with him is unknown. When people come into your life, it's a big mystery. People are one big question mark. You have no idea what they're going to do until they do it. And honestly, it's the same thing with God, yet he's not clueless. He knows the plans. He's my creator. He is the author and perfecter of my faith. He created me, which means he created me with a purpose. So he knows exactly what he's doing with my life. And while I may not know his plans offhand, I know that he has a plan. And he promises me that he has plans to prosper me and not to harm me. And so that what that tells me is that though I may face pain in my life, whatever pain I face is ultimately for my good. Plans to give me hope and a future. What that signifies to me, hope in a future, is purpose. It's meaning. It's value. God is not like a man that he's just wandering around aimlessly, just doing things. Everything he does is intentional. And all I need to do is humble myself and walk in faith and trust that God has everything under control with respect to my life. I've had a rough go with people, I think anyway. And now that I look at it, it's really just a small, select group that I've allowed to kind of dictate the trajectory of my life. My best friend in high school, we were supposed to go to college together, and we moved in on the same day, separate dorms, and we had fun that Friday night. We hung out Saturday. I had a good time. I thought we went to the movies. We saw Skeleton Key and get back to the dorm. And I noticed that she's a little sad. and I wasn't in the mood to honestly deal with it. I was having such a good time, so I just ignored her and went back to my dorm, and I figured I'd check in with her later. And I get a call from her mom asking me to go talk to her daughter because her daughter is begging her to come pick her up and take her home. And this is my best friend since the 8th grade. And I knew there was nothing I could say. There was nothing I could do. I went up to talk to her and she's telling me how she can't do it. She just wants to go home. She's homesick. And I said, okay. I didn't speak to her after that. We didn't speak for several months. And she was gone the next day. Her mom came and picked her up. They packed up her side of the room and she went back to Charlotte and I stayed. My, how history repeats itself, but we won't even go there. She and I didn't speak for several months, and we spoke on and off over the years, but we really haven't spoken, I'd say, since probably 2017 was the last time we spoke. But that's the first time I really remember just being left. And then I joined a Christian ministry. I was an atheist when I met them. They led me to the Lord later my freshman year, and everything seemed good. But come sophomore year, it's like I wasn't important anymore, and I felt so left behind. I had someone that was trying to disciple me, but I was just so angry and so hurt, and I felt so dismissed, so unloved, uncared for, unwanted. And that sat with me for a very long time. And that's something I've had a hard time forgiving. And that really set the tone for my Christian walk. I had a hard time making Christian friends after that. I had a hard time trusting Christians after that. And different friendships over the years where people just kind of come in and it's like they use me for one thing or another and then they're gone. I have to take my own advice, eat my own words. Sometimes people suck. That has nothing to do with who God is. And instead of being so angry and so bitter and unforgiving, I need to just take a second and humble myself and learn the lesson that God is trying to teach me through these relationships. Trust. Yeah, I still don't get it. So this is what's been on my mind lately. Thank you so much for coming on this mental journey with me. If you have questions, go to my YouTube and leave a comment. That way I'll be able to see it and I can respond. Or if you have questions. But thank you for your patience. We're getting back on a regular routine and I will see you next time.